I think all here mentioned, obviously, COVID, the shift to remote work, working from anywhere. So a question from one of our participants today. So now with such a distributed workforce, what are some of the suggestions or recommendations for securing users on networks that IT has no control over?
I can start. Yeah. So what we talk about from work from home is, so I've worked from home close to 15 plus years. So it's just normal for me. But a lot of people got thrusted into working from home. And what happens is people delineate between their work environment and their home environment. And what that means is they're going to be a little more lax at home, right? They're going to be getting on their bank accounts, their Facebooks, their my kids will laugh if they see that if I don't say TikTok and Snapchat and those things, right? That I don't use, they use, right? But those are the things that happen when you're at home. You don't think about it. You're like, oh, I can just go and look at this and go do that. And, oh, click on that email and open up my personal email that you would never do at home. And here's the problem. Some companies don't have VPNs set up. So you could be a VPN, you can keep that separated, but here's the disconnect. When you shut off the VPN, you're doing stuff on your machine. As soon as you connect that VPN, think about it like taking your laptop or your machine, walking into your work environment and setting it in. That's what's happening when you're VPNing. And that's why I keep saying, and I'm going to say it again, it's security is everyone's problem. So what you need is security awareness training, all that kind of stuff. I won't go into that whole thing again, but what needs to happen is when you're at home and you're working and you work on a machine that connects to your work environment, consider yourself at that environment. If you did that, the whole security posture for the whole world would get better, because you'd be sitting here, your Wi-Fi would be a password, you have some kind of edge router, something that you probably don't even know about, but it's there, right? And then just think about what you're doing. Maybe have a personal computer that doesn't connect to your work VPN, right? Maybe make sure all the antiviruses are up to date. Make sure all your passwords are up to date. Make sure that you're not keeping all the passwords synced on your laptop so that if somebody does compromise it, they see everything you can do, right? So I could go on, but let me have the panelists jump in as well. Dennis.
Yeah, so again, you go first. I've been flapping my gums the whole time. You go, Dennis.
Okay. Yeah, working from home, just, if possible, don't share that same PC that your kids are doing their homework with or going out doing those things with your work PC. Ideally, kids may try to get on to have you be able to put your computer to sleep after 5 minutes or 15 minutes when it's home. So that way kids can't get onto it without getting your credentials. That's number one thing. The other thing is, with the VPN, being cautious of that. Many organizations are moving away from the VPN because
that's true.
The user experience is lacking. Because in 2020, when everyone started to work from home, most organization was sized for maybe 25% people working from home. And then when you go to 75 to 90%, the user experience went down. So that's where the single sign-on is important, going directly out to corporate resources or business resources, making sure everything's encrypted in transit. That's another zero trust principle.
Exactly.
And what else? I could go on and on with different things. It just be mindful that for the work environment and the home environment are separate, and that's the main thing, the main principle.
Yeah. If I was an attacker, sorry, Zach, I just want to add, if I was an attacker, I'd be attacking people's homes right now because I know they're at home and I know they're connecting to systems that I want access to what they're connecting to. So who do you think they're attacking now? Yeah.
Wholeheartedly agree. And actually, the home is probably the worst place now because it's trusted, right? You trust your home, you must be secure. So, but let's talk about that. What are your children doing? Are they playing Minecraft? Did they download a public repo of Minecraft that is basically rooted and you got a hacker sitting on your network, the same network in which you're now connecting, and you're going to put your work laptop on a VPN and funnel traffic? That's a problem. For
sure.
Well, when I was head of cybersecurity for an MSP, I won't say the name. It was effectively an MSP in-house for a private equity firm. And I started to send home Cisco Meraki firewalls with, with the cellular backup. And I would set up the firewall rules so that it would route the traffic only for the corporate owned device through that tunnel for finance. And now I actually have a different sort of thought. Not that I think that's a great idea for companies to send home some extra protection for the home networks and segregate the internet and the local area network. But I also now think of VPN as another opportunity to authenticate with MFA, even if I'm not going to route traffic. It's just an authentication opportunity for differential forms of MFA. But yeah, the local area network is a real problem at homes. There's a lot going on there. IoT constantly exposed, and how do you protect yourself as an organization? Well, it's simple. Move away from on-premise stuff, move to the cloud, adopt SaaS, address SAML and zero trust. That's your path.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you go back where all of us started our careers, right? We kind of talked about it a little bit. I even implemented Meraki's before Cisco bought them. So that's how far I go back, right? So but think about it. IT departments and IT people, all of us are IT people, right? We loved it because everything was there. And little by little, to Zach's point, people started, like salespeople started traveling, executives, you can't put security on my stuff. I need to be able to access my stuff. So leave me alone, but secure everyone else. And back then, I don't know if this happened to you guys, but back then you're like, okay, yeah, of course, you're the boss. But now, if I was a CISO or a director of IT, or if I was in those positions, I'd be like, no, sorry, you have the exact same restrictions as everyone else, or I need to go somewhere else, because there's going to be something that happens that they're going to use it without doing zero trust and just letting you guys do whatever you want with inside and outside access. People are going to access it, right? So I always use this analogy of a house. Think of your house, because everybody lives in a house, apartment, doesn't matter what it is, right? How many access points does it take to get in? One. A door, a window, a garage, breaking down the wall, doesn't matter, right? One. Now associate that with an IP address. That's all it needs. An attacker needs one little sliver of access to get you, to get in, to see what you're doing, to be able to compromise you, to see what data you have, all that kind of stuff. So at the end of the day, you have to be zero trust security to lock everything down and know who's in there. And then if people do get past that zero trust, then you have things like DLP and different types of things that can tell you what's going on. But you have to start with zero trust, right, Zach? Wouldn't you agree? You have to start with zero trust?
I believe that that's absolutely the case. And that's the approach I took when I was VP of engineering at the Last Mile. And we were spinning up coding camps inside state prisons, starting off at San Quentin. And, back to the framework. I needed framework in place in order to secure that environment, to start to build out something that looked like zero trust. I needed to comply with CDCR rules. So, framework. Once I found JumpCloud in 2014, it became that core part in which I could build on, like you mentioned, Dennis, with your pillars. And zero touch has to be part of the plan. Even if you're not just doing it proactively, compliance is going to come along, insurance is going to come along, and they're going to make you do it. So you may as well start moving there now.
Yeah, the one thing we like to do is we don't want our customers be the low-hanging fruit. Yeah. What I mean by that is that the easy pickings, that's what the bad guys do, the malicious actors. They're looking for the low-hanging fruit, the easy things to do. So we try to take away things like people don't distribute your laptops out with root access for your common users. They don't need root access. You can install all the software and give them limited access.
But Dennis, I'm the president. Don't I get root access?
Yeah, you don't want to give them the keys to the kingdom. Those type of things. To give them the ability to do their job, be able to install things that they need to install. But root, it means root. That means you can do anything on that computer.
Dennis, you're right on this.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's what the bad guys are trying to do. They do escalation of privileges. And then once they get that, they get the foothold in there, and then they start sending data out. Can they send it out? Yeah. And then they can start sending it out to their resources. And then before you know it, they got all your data, or they've encrypted everything and have a copy stored somewhere else. Even if you pay the ransom, they may come back and re-ransom you uh, right after you pay it. So,
Dennis,
like,
I think you touched on something really important that we haven't really talked about, or maybe a little bit,
hmm
is the access that people have,
hmm
right? Making sure you understand who they have access to, what they have access to, and how big of a deal that is if they were compromised. And I
yeah.
know us three have all been in IT, right? I don't know, Katie, have you been in IT or just in sales? I want to, when it's SE. Are you an SE?
No, I
Okay.
am technology all the way, but I have a sales background.
hmm
Okay, so I started, but I'm in sales. So I used to be smart, but that was a long time ago, right? So nobody get mad at me. But every job I've been at, IT director, whatever it was, right? Different from my whole career. Every time I went into a place, people had access to data that they didn't need access to. I mean, would you guys agree on that? Like
Yeah.
literally every single time. And when you get in there, especially when it's the presidents or any anything, right? CEO,
hmm
CIO, CISO, they all have access to data. And some of the C's make sense, right? But when you start looking into it, they have access to the financial data to be able to write checks, but they're a VP of this company over here that should never do that. But when they get hired in, they just get put in that privileged group that with the Active Directory, and they just have it. So another thing, just for anybody that works in an IT environment, look at that, because you can save yourself so much trouble down the road. If somebody gets compromised that has access to data that the bad actors wanted access to, but you stop that and you sever that access, it's going to save you a lot of headache. Trust
Yep,
me, I've done it in my career and
hmm
I've been on both sides of it.
absolutely, 100%. Knowing who should have access to what, and then not over provisioning access. And then back to, you brought it up, Dennis, the amount of rights you have on your local machine. If you put a little bit of extra work up front as an IT org and cybersecurity org, and making sure that the systems are configured in a programmatic way, then you can get away from that local administrative
Right.
elevation, right? And we need to be there, as well as other tools, other really important tools that put framework around what can execute on a machine. But that first line of defense is really that administrative access. And do we all need that? I even as a VP of IT, I did not have admin access. I had a separate account in order to go
You're
affect
smarter
those
than me, Zach. I gave myself access to everything, but yes, I
things.
learned, right? I learned.
Yeah. Not many CEOs need to run PowerShell scripts.
Yeah, yeah,
Point,
Zach,
Dennis.
as I am the salesperson here. I am from JumpCloud, and so I would be foolish to miss the point that JumpCloud, and looking at the user lifecycle management and what you can do from a programmatic standpoint for both user onboarding and offboarding. Ideally, you're using JumpCloud or a similar tool, so it's not all that much work on the front end. You now,
that's
though, are absolutely sure that everybody's getting access to only what they need, and you're filling those holes before they begin.
If I could go 15 years ago, I wish I would have met JumpCloud. Let me just be very clear. And Proofpoint and all these other tools, right? So it's amazing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it's a little work up front to think about
Yeah.
how you want to affect that, what applications are appropriate for which groups, and using a powerful tool like JumpCloud, or if it's something else, using that to provision those things. But really not thinking about the user admin rights as part of that process, doing things in a new programmatic way.
And that's one of the main reasons why we partner with JumpCloud, is that the collapsing, or actually the integration of what you can do. What JumpCloud does is like 4 or 5 separate products combined into one, and that makes it easier to administer. to provide that user experience for your customer, for your end users or your customers, it's so much easier. And it seems to them as, oh man, these guys have their act together. All I needed to do is provide my name, and they give me a laptop and it's provisioned, and I'm automatically into Salesforce, and I'm into Office 365. Everything's encrypted, and I don't have to do anything. And if and be able to provide that information to your C-suite, saying, even though we have a sales team clear across the world, we got all this information. We know that they have access to, what they call least privilege in the security world, is that only people have access to what they need to do their job. So you have reasonable assuredness that these folks, your folks are protected from themselves, really.
Yeah.
I worked at a government contractor earlier in my career, and there was a room in every building. There was about 5 different companies. I won't say the names, right? But there was rooms that were not rooms. And I was a very young guy as an IT director. I was 23 years old. And they said, Jason, you have access to everything in this whole building, all these buildings. You can't go into that room. And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, that is a secure system to the, like, I think it was the Pentagon or something like that, right? Something crazy. One day they couldn't print from it, but I couldn't look at it. So I had to sit from this side of it, look at the back of the computer, and tell them what to do from this side. And the reason I bring that story up, zero trust comes into play, right? They wanted to completely control who went into that room, who could see that data, and who could communicate with that other side of the agency to be able to have that conversation. So these zero trust measures have been in since we've been alive, right? And since there's been technology, it's just now starting to trickle down from the higher levels down to when you're at working from home. All these zero trust comes into play. And that's why I keep saying that security is everyone's responsibility.
Absolutely.
You're bringing up memories from my military days, working at the Pentagon.
Oh, there you go.
Doing
So when you go to the
work
Pentagon,
there.
right, you can't go into any door you want, right?
No, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Same thing with data.
Or air gap systems that didn't have access to the internet. It's zero trust has been there. It's just looked different. And now that we're, SaaS forward as as a technology, and hopefully everybody is moving that way, it's just becoming more and more important to adapt it.
Yeah. And the other point is, think about this. If you walk down your street in your neighborhood and you had the most sensitive data you had in the world, and you just used it in like a billboard form, and you're just showing everybody, that's what happens if you don't encrypt your data. That's what happens if you don't VPN. That's if you don't know what's going on. That's what you don't have DLP. That's, all these different things to make sure you're secure. Think about it that way. When I used to explain what VPN was, it's like traversing the internet in a car that's like armored, and you get to drive through the internet and people can't get in, right? Everyone else is just kind of running around, knocking into walls, like, oh, we're the internet. Everybody can do whatever they want, right? So that's why
my clear password.
Here's my password. Here's my data that I don't want anybody to see. And it just comes down to zero trust, right? Think about, and I try to do that in a reasonable way so people can think about it like, oh, how does this relate to real world, right? Would you go outside with your bank account with a big old billboard and say, there's my bank account. Anybody want access to it? Here's my username and password. That's what you're doing if you're not using security, if you're not using zero trust security. That's what you're doing.
Yep. And then there's logging, right? So there's
there you go.
All tools, and there's having them in a single pane of glass type of way, but then there's when something does happen, because even with the best laid plans, things can still happen. But have you set yourself up from a logging perspective to go find out when, what, and for how long? And that's really important. I think that's something we're doing a really good job at JumpCloud. And I know that when we start talking about single sign-on and SAML, being able to see that ingress and egress of data and authentication there is really important. Then wrapping that all with MFA and being able to prove to auditors for compliance reason, yeah, we got all this, here's our logs, you can see this person logged in here and there, and
yeah, Zach, you're exactly right on the compliance side of things. Compliance, I like to loop in the insurance, cybersecurity insurance with that. A couple years ago, you were able to get cybersecurity insurance and just sign here, where you go. Now, the insurance companies, since they've been paying out on these ransomware things, they ask that you have these measures in place. And if you sign on the dotted line that you have these measures in place and it turns out you didn't, you're on the hook. They're not going to pay out.
Yeah, there's a whole list of compensating controls, right? Like boom, 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 right? Yeah.
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 You definitely see some frantic partners here at JumpCloud with a client and new security or cybersecurity insurance requirements kicking in at the end of the month or whatever it is, and there's a mad panic. So if you're not experiencing it today, chances are you will be soon. So get ahead of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's VPN, that's ingress into your Windows, Mac, and Linux. That's your single sign-on. There's a whole bunch of stuff that comes into play there, and zero trust being sort of at the core of that.
Please subscribe and check out more content from us.